Yo, what is up, guys? So, a 9 to 5 job, is it still worth it? Well, let's get into this one because this is a very gray area topic. Obviously, I want to cover a lot of the negatives. A lot of people feel exploited. The cost of living is going up. You've heard it all before, and I understand why a lot of people are choosing life over working their life away, especially when you have to work even more hours just to survive. Sometimes I could see why people are quote unquote living above their means or doing some unorthodox stuff. And I don't mean crime, by the way. I mean, like taking out more loans or anything like that just to kind of get ahead. Now, obviously, this is not something I would do, and I recommend people stay out of debt if they can. But for the people who are kind of forced into that, I try not to judge too harshly because you never know what someone's situation is, especially with how fair weather a lot of people in society can be and how sometimes people could be left holding bags. You don't know if they got into a venture with good decisions, especially if you looked at all these crypto rug pulls and everything like that. You never know how someone did something with good intentions and got tricked. What could I say? The world is very morally gray. Just as many good people as there are, there's probably just as many bad people out there for them to meet. But as someone who works a full-time job and does his own hustles on the side for a little bit of extra income so I could tuck more money away because it is getting harder whether you're working full-time with a side hustle or not, I believe that a 9 to 5 job is worth working if you find the right one. Because although a lot of workers nowadays feel quote-unquote exploited, and I try not to use that. I try to use underpaid because, look, as an employee, I'm signing on to a job. They say, hey, I'll pay you this many dollars an hour, or I'll pay you this a week, or they'll give you the stipulations. It's up to you to sign on or not. And then there's toxic work environments. There's a lot of narcissistic people in the work environments now in the workforce, which makes working a 9 to 5 job even harder because on top of working your job, you have to deal with a bunch of people you don't really like. So what I would say is look after your stress too. Just remember that, money is important, but it's not everything. If you feel like a job is a tax on your mental health or you're just not cut out for it, you'll know when you know. Obviously, you have to find the right fit that's right for you, and you have to stay with it. Don't be a job hopper. That doesn't look good on resumes. It makes it harder to find work. But also, I recommend you know your employee rights, okay? You do have rights as an employee. Even if you're in a right-to-work state, you have those rights, okay? Now, a lot of people, because I live in a right-to-work state. I'm not going to say just which one right now, but a lot of employers have used that against me. And they have said, well, we're working in a right to work, but they have been doing some really shady stuff. And, I'm pretty sure that, that's if they're breaking the law, it doesn't, get trumped out by the quote unquote right to work state. And if you're not in a right to work state, then guess what? Then you really are secure in that position. But if you see your employer do some shady stuff or they do some things that, are against your rights as an employee, obviously vacate. Obviously, think about your future there. I mean, you could work in that minefield, but just be ready to have one foot out the door in case things go south. As much as I think that people should work and at least put in an effort despite how hard the times are, I understand that people do not have to be subjected to poor treatment in the workplace. But the reason I say this and I give both sides and to give kind of a gray pill perspective on it is because of all the things, the only thing I hate worse than being in a job I don't like is being absolutely broke and having financial problems. But as you work your 9 to 5 job, I recommend that you look for other things to do too on top of that, just because I understand that it's not going to be enough all the time. But I think that fire that's lit under us could probably mean the difference between sinking or swimming in these modern times because we see a lot of people ridden with despair. Those are the people I am personally worried for the most. And I know that depression is not something that you could just get over, but it's something you should probably start working on, finding what helps cure your depression or gives your life some sort of meaning. Because I think the people, and I'm not saying being toxically positive, but at least being somewhat optimistic, not dangerously optimistic, but realistically optimistic, are the ones that are going to be able to work a job and then do their own thing on the side. And eventually their side thing becomes their full-time thing and they become their own business entity pretty much. Obviously, of course, you're probably going to want to make an LLC for that, all that stuff. That could be a later discussion. But I feel like there's a difference between looking at the situation we live at pragmatically and being completely pessimistic and just flipping the table over and not really giving ourselves a chance to succeed in a professional realm. Especially with being mentally ill and being depressed, being super trendy, it gets so, infectious in our society. And honestly, I'm not a fan of it. I know that sometimes we do get depressed and sometimes people have things that are necessarily wrong with them, but I don't think that's something that perfectly mentally healthy people should strive to be like just because it's popular or it's trending. In fact, honestly, once you reach a certain age, you should not care about what's popular or trending, and you should find out who you really are. Because the popular census means to say that it's not worth it. And I think that being unpopular could probably help us in a way. But you know what, like I'm saying, don't just go diving in headfirst to any situation. Know what you're getting paid, know what the thing is, get to know your employer, not necessarily on a personal level, but how he does business. See what you could learn, because the wealth doesn't just come from the money that you make, but it comes from the knowledge that you acquire on the job too, the experience you get along the way. Because I know things financially are hard for a lot of us right now, but I do see a silver lining around this cloud of current society because we have so many tools at our disposal, waste, might I say, that we could potentially forge our own path, like a different path that's not your typical work a job until you're 50 and then they let you go on retirement, or 80 and then they let you go on retirement. But I think with a lot of the tools that we've got at our disposal, especially with the power of the internet, I think that, we can potentially forge our own path. So in conclusion, I think a 9-to-5 job is definitely still on the table, but it's definitely it should not be a final destination for anyone. And I know that sometimes it's good to take a sit down and say, you know what, the world we live in is crazy and it is only getting wilder. Trust me, I know 2025 is up to a gnarly start. But hear me out when I say that, I believe that if we continue to strive forward and push through, we might come out on the better end of this, and we might come out more grateful for the good times once the bad times fade away. But, 9-to-5, definitely a first stop and definitely still plausible. But, what should your last stop be? I think that's up to you. But, you will decide that, not necessarily overnight. And as many times as you could sit down and say, this is bad, this is a bad situation we've grown up in, I think we could also look at that cloud and say, hey, there's that silver lining right there. So maybe we still have a chance. I might be being a little too overly optimistic. I might be wrong. Trust me, this is all just my opinion. But I hope maybe I put something in your mind to think about. And cheers. I'll see you on the next one. Happy hunting. Peace out.